Although my goal is to give you some encouragement in this episode to at least, add some perspective as to why watching the news isn't necessarily instructive or informative when it comes to your finances. So my goals for this episode are these. I want to hopefully give you some context into, hey, this is not the first time that we've had major events in this country. So even though past performance is not indicative of future returns, we can at least go back to those periods, see how the market performed, and hopefully give you some comfort that it is not all doom and gloom, even when the rest of the world is doom and gloom. And my second goal for this podcast is to give you some investment behaviors after the break that you can use during periods of market volatility to position yourself to come out on the other end of it as good as possible. And now that I've given you those disclaimers, let's actually get into the meat and potatoes of the episode, starting with this. I guarantee you that if you believe that the sky is falling, and it may actually be falling, that it is going to fall whether you keep your eye on it or not. So there's a certain level of hope in my voice that after this episode, you will just keep on doing some of the things I tell you to do in the second half and just stop looking at your investment account balances every day. It is not helpful. And what it leads to in most cases is you making an action that is counterintuitive to what would actually benefit your finances. The reason I say it could be counterintuitive is because in periods like this, where there's severe amounts of volatility, we often have the assumption that the stock market is going to perform terribly over the course of the next several years, when in reality, at least if past is prologue, that has rarely been the case. Let me try to show you some historical precedent. If you're looking on screen, you're looking at a chart of the S&P 500's returns going back like 99 years to 1926. As a recap, we've talked about the S&P 500 on this podcast before. They are the 500 most cash-rich companies on the U.S. stock exchange. So this is something where people have seen it as the gold standard of investing over a long period, because since it's the 500 most cash rich, if for some reason a company is doing poorly and is no longer a part of that 500, they are replaced by a company that has taken up their place in the ranks. So it's almost like the law of natural selection. The cream rises to the top, which is why people typically follow this index when they're trying to see how the market is doing. So let's go back through some of the worst periods in our country's history over that period of time. We're going to start with World War II. World War II was 1939 to 1945. I'm going to be talking about U.S. involvement in these wars since it's an American index. So if we go to 1939, we can see that for the first 3 years, the market was down, negative 0.41%, negative 9.78%, negative 11.59%. But from then on, 20.34, 25.9, 19.75, 36.44, and over the course of the years of World War II, the S&P 500 actually averaged just under 12% through that stretch of time. Let's go to the Vietnam War. Vietnam War is from 1965 to 1973, and you will see that over the Vietnam War, even though it was an extended period of time, the S&P 500 averaged just under 6% in terms of an average annual return. Even in the depths of warfare, when we have the assumption that the stock market would do nothing but tank, there is historical precedent to see that we are often incorrect in that assumption. Does that mean that that's what's going to happen this time? No, but at least gives you the opportunity to go back to World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, post 9/11, 2008, to say, hey, it has happened this way in the past. There is a strong possibility that it could happen this way in the future, and that my desire to run for the hills may be a thing that actually prevents me from having those market gains when the market's on the upswing.